Hello everyone, and a warm welcome to today's session. I'm excited to introduce you to our topic, Human Resource Management for UGC Net Preparation. On this slide, you'll see the title clearly displayed. We'll be exploring key concepts and strategies to help you succeed in your exam. Over the course of this presentation, we'll cover important topics, tips, and insights that are essential for your preparation journey. I'm glad you're here, and I look forward to guiding you through this material. Let's get started. Welcome to Unit VII, where we'll be diving into labor legislation. This section is crucial because understanding the legal framework governing employment helps us grasp how workers' rights and employer responsibilities are balanced. Labor legislation sets the standards for fair wages, working hours, safety, and other essential aspects of employment. It ensures that workplaces are fair and equitable for everyone involved. Throughout this unit, we'll explore the key laws and regulations that shape labor practices. By the end, you'll see how these laws support both economic growth and social justice. So let's get started and see how labor laws form the backbone of a fair working environment. Let's take a closer look at the foundations of labor legislation in India. Labor laws are built on guiding principles that aim to protect the weaker party, which is the labor force, from the stronger party, meaning the capital or employers. One of the key principles is social justice. This ensures that profits are distributed fairly and workers are protected from exploitation. It's about creating a balanced and fair workplace environment. Another important principle is social equity. This means our laws need to be adaptable and flexible, changing with social conditions to stay relevant and effective. Then, we have the principle of national economy. This reminds us that laws should support, not hinder, the country's industrial growth and overall economic progress. And finally, there's international uniformity. This involves aligning Indian labor laws with standards set by the International Labour Organization, or ILO, to ensure consistency and global compatibility. Understanding these principles helps us see how India's labor laws are designed to promote fairness, flexibility, growth, and global standards within the framework of protecting workers' rights. Let's take a closer look at the role of the ILO. It was established in 1919 as part of the Treaty of Versailles, marking its origins in the aftermath of World War I. The organization is designed to be tripartite, meaning it brings together governments, employers, and workers to collaborate on labor issues. This structure is key because it ensures that all major stakeholders have a voice in shaping labor standards and policies. The ILO's core bodies include the International Labour Conference, often called the Parliament of Labor, which meets to discuss and set international labor standards. Then there's the governing body, which acts as the organization's executive council, overseeing its work and making important decisions. Finally, we have the International Labour Office, based in Geneva, which functions as the permanent secretariat, essentially the operational heart of the ILO, supporting its activities year-round. Connecting this to the overall theme, the ILO's structure and core bodies exemplify its mission to promote fair and decent work worldwide through collaboration, standards, and effective organization. Let's take a closer look at the Indian Constitution and its approach to labor. Labor is listed in the concurrent list, which means both the center and the states have the authority to make laws on this subject. This shared power helps ensure that labor laws can be tailored to regional needs while maintaining national standards. Now, the Constitution also guarantees fundamental rights related to labor. For example, Article 14 ensures equality before the law, meaning every worker should be treated fairly and equally. Article 19(1)(c) gives workers the right to form trade unions, which is essential for collective bargaining and protecting workers' interests. There are also specific protections against harmful practices. Article 23 prohibits forced labor, safeguarding workers from exploitation. Similarly, Article 24 bans child labor in factories and mines for children under 14, aiming to protect young children from hazardous work environments. Furthermore, Article 39(d) emphasizes the principle of equal pay for equal work, promoting fairness in compensation. And, importantly, Article 43A was added through the 42nd Amendment to encourage workers' participation in management decisions, reflecting a shift toward more inclusive and democratic workplace governance. All these provisions highlight how the Constitution not only recognizes labor rights, but also seeks to balance economic growth with social justice, aligning with our overall theme of fair and equitable labor practices. Now, let's take a closer look at the key provisions outlined in some important statutory acts. Starting with the Factories Act of 1948, it applies to factories with more than 10 workers if they use power, or 20 without. This act mandates welfare provisions, such as canteens for factories with over 250 workers, creches for workplaces with more than 30 women, welfare officers for those employing over 500 workers, and safety officers if the workforce exceeds 1,000. These provisions are designed to ensure worker welfare and safety. Moving on to the Mines Act of 1952, which applies to all types of excavation work. It sets maximum working hours, 9 hours per day for above-ground mining and 8 hours underground, and explicitly prohibits women from working underground, emphasizing safety and gender-specific regulations. Next is the Contract Labor Act of 1970. It covers contracts involving 20 or more workers, although in some states, this threshold is increased to 50. A key point here is that the principal employer is responsible for ensuring wages are paid and amenities are provided if the contractor fails to do so, highlighting the importance of accountability. The Child Labor Act of 1986 is focused on protecting children under 14 from hazardous occupations. While employment of children in such dangerous jobs is prohibited, adolescents between 14 and 18 are regulated but not outright banned, balancing protection with permissible work. The Migrant Workmen Act of 1979 deals with interstate migrant workers, with a threshold of 5 or more migrants. Important provisions include a displacement allowance, covering 50% of monthly wages, and the requirement to pay journey allowances, ensuring migrants are supported during their movement. Finally, the Building and Other Construction Workers Act of 1996 applies where there are more than 10 workers involved in construction activities. It emphasizes registering workers as beneficiaries and mandates a 1% cess on construction costs to fund welfare activities, underscoring the government's role in worker welfare in the construction sector. Together, these acts form a comprehensive framework aimed at safeguarding workers' rights, safety, and welfare across various industries. Now, let's take a quick look at some specific acts related to labor laws and safety regulations. Starting with the Child Labor, Prohibition and Regulation, Act of 1986. This act defines a child as a person who has not yet completed 14 years of age. An adolescent, on the other hand, is someone between 14 and 18 years. The major update in 2016 brought a complete ban on child labor across all occupations, with the exception of helping their family in non-hazardous work after school hours. This highlights the government's strong stance against child exploitation while allowing some family-based activities. Moving on to the Mines Act of 1952, it emphasizes essential safety and health provisions. For example, drinking water must be available on site, and if there are over 100 workers, the water must be cooled to prevent health issues. Additionally, first aid facilities are mandatory, with at least one first aid box provided for every 100 workers, and a dedicated first aid room required if there are more than 150 workers. Next, the Contract Labor, Regulation and Abolition, Act of 1970 aims to regulate contract labor where it cannot be eliminated entirely, and to abolish it where the work is perennial or core to the business. An important point to note here is that most of these acts have now been merged into the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code of 2020. While the old thresholds are still referenced, the new code has increased the threshold for applying the Contract Labor Act to 50 workers, making it more streamlined. Connecting all these points to our overall theme, these laws collectively aim to improve working conditions, ensure safety, and protect vulnerable groups like children and contract workers. They show how legislation evolves to better serve both workers and employers in today's dynamic work environment. Now, let's turn our attention to Unit VIII, which focuses on wages. Wages are a fundamental aspect of the labor market and play a crucial role in the overall economy. They represent the compensation workers receive for their labor, and understanding how wages are determined helps us grasp broader economic concepts. We'll explore how wages are set, the factors that influence them, and their impact on both workers and employers. It's important to see wages not just as numbers, but as a reflection of productivity, skill levels, and market conditions. Throughout this section, we'll connect wages to themes like income distribution, economic inequality, and labor market dynamics. By the end, you'll see how wages influence everyday life and the health of the economy as a whole. Let's now explore the concept of wages, which are essentially the price of labor. When preparing for the NET exam, you'll often need to distinguish between different types of wages and understand the theories that explain how wages are determined. First, let's look at the types of wages. The minimum wage is the absolute minimum amount required to sustain basic life needs like food and shelter. It's a statutory requirement, meaning it's set by law. Moving up, we have the fair wage, which is above the minimum but still below what we call a living wage. The fair wage largely depends on the industry's capacity to pay, which can vary widely. Then there's the living wage, which is higher still. A living wage is designed to provide not just survival, but also health, comfort, insurance, and education, covering social needs that go beyond mere subsistence. Now, let's turn to some key wage theories, which help us understand what influences wage levels. Starting with the subsistence theory, proposed by David Ricardo, this theory suggests wages tend to stay at a level just enough for workers to survive, what we call the iron law of wages. Next is the wage fund theory, associated with Adam Smith and J.S. Mill. It posits that wages are paid out of a fixed fund of capital, meaning wages depend on the size of this fund and the population. Then we have the residual claimant theory, put forward by Francis A. Walker. According to this view, wages are what's left over after paying for rent, interest, and profit, so wages are essentially the residual. The marginal productivity theory, championed by Marshall and Hicks, states that wages are determined by the additional value a worker adds, the marginal product, at the last unit of labor. Moving to Karl Marx's surplus value theory, it argues that capitalists pay workers subsistence wages, but then pocket the surplus value, the extra produced by workers beyond their wages. Lastly, the bargaining theory, associated with John Davidson, emphasizes that wages are shaped by the bargaining power of unions relative to employers. The stronger the bargaining position, the better the wages workers can secure. All these theories help us understand the complex factors that influence wages, tying into the broader theme of labor economics and market dynamics. Let's take a closer look at the legislative framework surrounding wages and Social Security. Starting with the Payment of Wages Act of 1936, this law primarily applies to factories and railways. Its main focus is ensuring timely payment of wages, which must be made by the 7th day if there are fewer than 1,000 workers, or by the 10th day otherwise. Importantly, deductions from wages are capped at 50%, or 75% in the case of cooperatives. Moving on to the Minimum Wages Act of 1948, this applies to scheduled employments. Employers must follow certain methods like the committee method or notification method to set wages, and these wages are reviewed every 5 years to keep pace with inflation and economic changes. Next is the Payment of Bonus Act of 1965. It covers employers with more than 20 workers, or more than 10 for factories. The law mandates a minimum bonus of 8.33% and a maximum of 20%, with eligibility for bonus requiring an employee to have worked at least 30 days in a year. The Equal Remuneration Act of 1976 prohibits gender discrimination in pay and recruitment across all employers. It emphasizes equal pay for equal work, based on the constitutional principle enshrined in Article 39d. Then, there's the Payment of Gratuity Act of 1972, which applies to workplaces with over 10 employees. It provides a formula for calculating gratuity, 26 times the last drawn salary, multiplied by 15, and then multiplied by the number of years worked. The maximum gratuity payable is 20 lakh, and employees become eligible after completing 5 years of service. Lastly, the Employees' Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 1952 covers workplaces with over 20 employees. It mandates a contribution of 12% of wages from both employees and employers. The employer's contribution is split into 3.67% towards Provident Fund and 8.33% towards pension. Understanding this legislative framework is crucial because it ensures workers' rights are protected, and it also helps employers stay compliant with the law, fostering a fair and secure working environment. Let's talk about wage differentials and why workers get paid differently across various situations. First, there's the occupational difference, which is based on the skill level required for a job. For example, an engineer typically earns more than a laborer because of the specialized skills involved. Then, we have interfirm differences, where different companies pay different wages for the same role. This can depend on a company's pay structure or profitability. Regional differences also play a big role, especially when considering the cost of living. For instance, wages in Mumbai tend to be higher than in a small town to compensate for higher living expenses. Lastly, personal factors like seniority or individual productivity can influence wages. More experienced or highly productive individuals often earn more. All these factors highlight how complex and varied wage structures can be, tying back to the overall theme of understanding economic disparities and labor markets. Welcome to Unit IX, Labor Welfare. In this section, we'll explore the crucial concepts surrounding the well-being of workers in the workplace. Labor welfare refers to the programs, services, and facilities provided to employees to improve their quality of life. It's about ensuring that workers are not just productive, but also have a sense of security and satisfaction. This includes things like health and safety measures, housing facilities, medical services, and recreational activities. By focusing on labor welfare, organizations can boost morale, increase productivity, and foster a positive work environment. It's a vital part of human resource management, linking employee welfare directly to organizational success. Ultimately, labor welfare helps create a balanced relationship between employers and employees, emphasizing fairness and care. So, understanding these principles is essential as we look at how to improve workplace conditions and promote sustainable growth. Labor welfare refers to the extra facilities and benefits provided to workers beyond their regular wages, all aimed at improving their living standards and overall well-being. It's about creating a better environment for workers, which in turn benefits the organization as a whole. Now, let's look at some of the key theories that explain why labor welfare is provided. These theories are extremely important because they give us insight into the underlying motivations and philosophies behind welfare initiatives. First, we have the policing theory, also known as the control theory. This suggests that employers provide welfare primarily because of legal requirements. Essentially, welfare is given because laws compel them to, not necessarily out of goodwill. Next is the religious theory, which views welfare as an act of investment or atonement. It's seen as a way for employers to earn good karma or to do penance for past sins, emphasizing moral and spiritual reasons. Then there's the philanthropic theory. This is driven by human kindness, employers who genuinely care for their workers and want to help improve their lives out of love for mankind. The paternalistic theory sees the employer as a kind of father figure, holding resources in trust for their workers, who are like children needing care and protection. Moving on, the placating theory suggests that welfare is given to buy peace. By providing benefits, employers aim to prevent strikes, unrest, or unionization, maintaining harmony at the workplace. The public relations theory views welfare as a strategic tool. Employers use it to build a good reputation in the market, showing they care for their workers and are socially responsible. The last one is the functional theory, which is more scientific. It states that welfare is provided to keep workers healthy, motivated, and productive, ultimately improving efficiency in the organization. So these theories help us understand that labor welfare can be motivated by legal, moral, strategic, or efficiency-driven reasons. Recognizing these different perspectives helps us appreciate the complexity and importance of welfare in the workplace. Let's talk about industrial health, safety, and hygiene, which are mainly governed by the Factories Act of 1948 and the Mines Act of 1952. These laws set the framework to ensure safe and healthy working conditions. Industrial health focuses on factors like proper ventilation, good lighting, access to clean drinking water, and sanitation facilities. These are fundamental to maintaining workers' well-being on the job. Industrial hygiene, on the other hand, is a scientific approach. It involves identifying and controlling environmental factors in the workplace, things like chemicals, physical hazards, and biological agents that can cause sickness or health issues. Occupational diseases are illnesses directly linked to specific jobs or work environments. For example, silicosis is common in mines due to inhaling silica dust. Asbestosis is found in cement or asbestos plants, and bisonosis, also known as brown lung, affects textile workers exposed to cotton dust. Then there are industrial accidents, which are unplanned events that lead to injuries. These can range from minor cuts to serious injuries or even fatalities. A helpful concept here is the Heinrich pyramid, which illustrates that for every one major injury, there are typically 29 minor injuries and about 300 near misses. This emphasizes the importance of proactive safety measures to prevent bigger accidents. Connecting all these points to our overall theme, it's clear that a comprehensive approach to health, safety, and hygiene not only protects workers, but also enhances productivity and creates a safer work environment for everyone. Now, let's delve into some core principles of welfare that guide responsible industry practices. First, social responsibility is about recognizing that industry has an obligation to the society it operates within. It's not just about profits, but about contributing positively to the community and ensuring sustainable development. Next, democratic values emphasize that workers should have a say in planning their own welfare. Giving employees a voice helps create fairer and more effective welfare programs. And finally, the adequacy of wages is crucial. Welfare should serve as a supplement to wages, not a replacement. It's about enhancing employees' well-being without diminishing their direct earnings. These principles are fundamental because they tie back to the overall goal of fostering ethical and sustainable industry practices that benefit everyone involved. Let's take a closer look at Social Security, which is essentially the protection society provides to individuals during times of need, such as old age, sickness, or unemployment. Now, Social Security can be viewed through two main perspectives: assistance and assurance. When we talk about assistance, we're referring to aid provided based on need, often means tested, meaning the government steps in to help those who are most vulnerable. Assurance, on the other hand, is more about social insurance, a system where individuals contribute during their working years and earn the right to benefits later. Let's explore the two pillars of Social Security in detail. First, we have social insurance, which is a contributory system. Both the employee and the employer contribute to it, and the benefits are earned based on the contribution history. Examples include the employee's state insurance, or ESI, which covers health, and the employee's provident fund, or EPF, for retirement savings. The second pillar is social assistance. This is non-contributory, meaning the government funds it from taxes, and it's designed to help those in need, regardless of their contribution history. Examples include old age pensions and maternity benefits aimed at the poor. Now, regarding eligibility, social insurance benefits are based on a person's contribution record. If you've paid into the system, you have a right to benefits. Conversely, social assistance is based on a means test, which assesses proof of poverty or need. Finally, the rights associated with these systems differ. Benefits under social insurance are considered a right. You earn them through your contributions. But social assistance is viewed as a social obligation of the state. The government provides aid because society recognizes the need to support its vulnerable members. Understanding these differences helps us appreciate how social security systems aim to balance individual responsibility with societal support, aligning with the overall goal of creating a fair and protective social safety net. Let's take a look at some specific welfare provisions that are mandated under the Factories Act of 1948. These are crucial for ensuring the well-being and safety of workers. First, washing facilities are mandatory for all factories, regardless of size. It's essential that workers have access to clean and convenient washing arrangements. Next, regarding first aid, the law requires at least one first aid box for every 150 workers. This ensures prompt medical attention in case of accidents. When it comes to canteens, if a factory employs more than 250 workers, having a proper canteen becomes mandatory. This helps workers access nutritious food during their shifts. Shelters or restrooms are also a must if there are more than 150 workers. These spaces provide workers a place to rest and rejuvenate during their breaks. For factories with more than 30 women workers, creches are mandatory. This supports female workers by allowing them to care for their children conveniently. Lastly, if a factory employs over 500 workers, appointing a welfare officer becomes compulsory. This officer is responsible for overseeing workers' welfare and addressing their concerns. All these provisions are designed to promote a safe, healthy, and supportive working environment. They highlight how legislation aims to protect workers' rights and well-being across different factory sizes. Now, let's turn our attention to Unit X, which focuses on the labor market. In this section, we'll explore how the labor market functions, including the key factors that influence employment, wages, and workforce dynamics. We'll look at how changes in the economy can impact job availability and the skills that are in demand. Understanding these concepts helps us see the bigger picture of economic health and individual employment opportunities. As we progress through this unit, keep in mind how these labor market trends tie into the broader themes of economic growth and societal well-being. It's essential to grasp these connections to fully appreciate the significance of labor market policies and their effects on both workers and employers. Let's take a closer look at the labor market, which is essentially where the demand for labor from employers intersects with the supply of labor from individuals. Now, when we talk about demand and supply in this context, it's important to understand what drives each side. Demand for labor is what we call a derived demand. That means employers don't want workers just for the sake of having workers. Instead, they want workers because those workers produce goods or services that are in demand. So the demand for labor depends on the demand for what those workers help create. On the supply side, we often illustrate this with what's called the backward bending supply curve. At first, as wages increase, more people are willing to work longer hours because the extra income is attractive. But there's a point where higher wages make people value their leisure time more than the additional income. After that point, even if wages keep rising, the supply of hours worked can actually decrease because workers prefer leisure over working more. Connecting this to the bigger picture, understanding these dynamics helps us see how wages and employment levels are set in the economy, balancing employers' needs with workers' preferences. It's a fundamental part of understanding how the overall labor market functions. Now, let's take a look at the different types of labor markets. First up is the perfectly competitive market. In this kind of market, you'll find many buyers and sellers, meaning no single entity has enough power to influence wages. The skills involved are generally homogeneous, and information is perfect, so everyone knows everything they need to know. Wages are determined purely by market forces, which creates a very efficient system. Next, we have monopsony, which is quite the opposite. Here, there's only one major buyer, usually an employer, and many workers selling their labor. Imagine a small coal mining town where one company owns all the mines. That single employer has a lot of power to set wages and conditions, often lower than in more competitive markets. Then there's the bilateral monopoly. Picture a situation where there's just one employer, but also just one powerful trade union representing the workers. This creates a unique dynamic where negotiations are really crucial because both sides hold significant power. Moving on, we have the internal labor market. This is common within large organizations, where positions are filled through promotions from within rather than hearing externally. It's a way to reward loyalty and develop career pathways inside the company. Finally, there's the dual labor market, which splits jobs into two sectors. The primary sector offers high wages, job security, and good working conditions. The secondary sector, on the other hand, is characterized by low wages, less security, and often gig or temporary work, which tends to be more unstable. Understanding these different market types helps us see how wages and employment conditions can vary dramatically depending on the context. Each of these plays a role in shaping the broader labor market landscape. Let's take a closer look at the composition and characteristics of India's labor force. First, the primary sector, which includes agriculture, still employs a large portion of the workforce. Although its share is shrinking over time, it remains a significant part of the economy. This highlights the ongoing dependence on agriculture in India. Next, there's the issue of informalization. Over 90% of Indian workers are engaged in the unorganized or informal sector, which means they generally lack social security and other protections. This is a critical challenge because it affects workers' well-being and the overall stability of the workforce. Another important point is the low labor force participation rate among women. Despite some recent improvements, women's participation remains a significant hurdle. Increasing female participation is essential for harnessing the full potential of India's demographic dividend. Finally, there's a notable skill gap. On one hand, we have a surplus of unskilled labor, which is abundant but not always suited for modern, skilled jobs. On the other hand, there's a shortage of highly skilled technical workers. Bridging this gap is vital for India's economic growth and competitiveness. All these factors, sectoral shifts, informalization, gender participation, and skill mismatches, are interconnected pieces of the larger puzzle of India's labor market evolution. Understanding these helps us see the challenges and opportunities ahead. Let's take a closer look at unemployment and underemployment, which are key aspects of the labor market. First, we have frictional unemployment, which is usually temporary. It happens when people are between jobs or searching for their first job, kind of like a transition period. Then there's structural unemployment, and this is a bit more concerning because it involves a mismatch between the skills workers possess and the skills employers actually need. This often happens due to technological changes that make certain skills obsolete. Next, we have cyclical unemployment, which ties directly to the health of the economy. During downturns or recessions, companies cut back, and more people lose jobs. That's cyclical unemployment in action. Now, there's also something called disguised unemployment, which is quite interesting. It's common in Indian agriculture, where more people work than necessary, but their marginal productivity is zero, meaning their extra effort doesn't really add value. Finally, underemployment refers to situations where people are working below their skill level or for fewer hours than they want. So, even if someone is technically employed, they might not be fully utilizing their abilities or working enough hours to meet their needs. Understanding these different types helps us grasp the complexities of the labor market and the challenges faced by workers and economies alike. Now, let's explore some of the new dynamics and challenges shaping the modern workforce. First, we have the rise of the gig economy. This is where platform-based work, like Uber, Zomato, or freelance coding, has become increasingly common. What's interesting here is that workers are seen more as partners rather than traditional employees, which shifts the entire employer-employee relationship. Next, we see the impact of remote and hybrid work models. Post-pandemic, we've experienced a significant shift that has effectively created a borderless labor market, especially for white-collar roles. This means talent can now be sourced from anywhere, increasing flexibility, but also presenting new management and coordination challenges. Finally, there's the integration of AI. Automation isn't just replacing manual, repetitive tasks anymore. Instead, there's a growing demand for soft skills, like creativity, emotional intelligence, and problem-solving, and for human-AI collaboration. This shift requires us to rethink skill development and how we prepare our workforce for a future where humans and machines work side by side. All these factors are interconnected and essential to understanding the evolving landscape of work today. They highlight the need for adaptability and continuous learning as key to thriving amidst these new dynamics. Let's take a closer look at some of the core problems faced by Indian labor. First, the migratory character. Many workers move from rural areas to urban centers in search of better opportunities. However, they often remain footloose, meaning they don't establish permanent roots in the cities. This mobility creates instability and makes it difficult to develop a skilled and committed workforce. Next, low productivity is a significant issue. This is often due to poor health among workers, a lack of proper training, and the use of outdated technology across many sectors. All these factors hinder efficiency and economic growth. Another challenge is indebtedness. Many rural and informal workers rely heavily on moneylenders, which traps them in a cycle of debt. This financial strain affects their well-being and their ability to invest in better skills or savings. Finally, absenteeism and labor turnover are particularly high in the manufacturing sector. Workers frequently miss work or leave their jobs, which disrupts production and affects overall industry stability. These interconnected problems highlight the complex challenges in improving the Indian labor force and underscore the importance of addressing these issues to foster sustainable growth. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. I truly appreciate your engagement and interest throughout this presentation. Remember, the concepts we've discussed are aimed at helping you understand the bigger picture and how these ideas can be applied in your own work. If you have any questions or want to explore further, please don't hesitate to reach out. Once again, thank you for being here and for your participation. I look forward to seeing how you implement these insights moving forward.